Welcome back, y'all. I'm Drew Hoagland, and this is MaineStreamCurrent. Today, I wanted to delve deeper into offshore wind turbines, but I got sidetracked because of a larger question. Why offshore wind turbines at all? So that's what led me into today's quest. This is all part of a larger picture into studying wind turbines, but before I could really investigate wind turbines themselves, I needed to ask myself, why? Why are we doing this? Of a list of things that I can count on two hands, climate change doesn't make it. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying there's not something there. But what I am saying is that as a Mainer, I'm more worried about my gas bill, my electric bill, about rent and mortgages going up, and about being able to heat myself this winter, and numerous other things. I'm sorry, but saving the climate right now doesn't cut it for me. Call me any name you want, but what I am saying is that of all the issues out there, this is not the most pressing one. So I wanted to dig more into wind turbines, but as I said, I got pulled into a side project, namely Maine Won't Wait, an initiative from December 2020, and we're going to find out all about that now. Getting right into it, Maine Won't Wait is Maine's comprehensive climate action plan launched in 2020 to tackle the pressing challenges of climate change while driving economic growth. The plan outlines a 4-year strategy with clear targets for reducing green gas emissions, promoting clean energy, and building resilience against climate change. And most of this is going to come from Maine Climate Council, and then some of it is going to come from Maine Public, and I will include those links below. So apparently this launched in December 2020, and there was so much going on at the time, and even afterwards, that I didn't have any mental capacity to put towards it. That being said, I don't think we can ignore it any longer, because politicians in Maine are moving quickly towards a future that we as Mainers are not ready for. So the key goals of Maine Won't Wait are 1. Emission reduction. The plan aims to cut Maine's green gas emissions by 45% by 2030 and 80% by 2050, with the ultimate goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2045. Key strategies include promoting renewable energy and improving energy efficiency. I mean, who doesn't want energy efficiency? As a Mainer, as someone that has to consume electricity and energy in various ways, of course I want it to be more efficient. I don't know that us charging forward as a state currently towards renewable energy is the smartest goal, especially given that it is 5.5 years out. That is soon. That's soon, y'all. And that's one of the major things that I'm going to complain about this whole time is, even if this is beneficial, and I'm questioning it, is this best for longevity? Or are we better on doing a gradual? Because if we jump into this, it seems like it's more likely to fail. And then if this is the ultimate goal, then if it fails so abruptly like that, it's going to take a long time for people to come around and want to do it again. Number 2, transition to clean energy. Maine plans to source 80% of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030. Again, so soon. With a focus on expanding solar and wind energy production. It also aims to install 100,000 heat pumps by 2025, reducing reliance on fossil fuels for heating. I mean, again, if heat pumps really are efficient and they really are as beneficial as they say, then we don't need all these incentives. We don't need the swift kick in the ass that they're really, really instilling. Number 3, clean transportation. As transportation is Maine's largest source of emissions, the plan targets having 219,000 energy targets having 219,000 electric vehicles on the road by 2030. This includes expanding EV charging stations and creating incentives to shift away from gasoline-powered vehicles. In Maine, it gets severely cold. Batteries don't work well in the cold. Batteries also need charging. And as we've seen in the last couple of years from California and Texas, they've had rolling blackouts. They can't run their ACs in their houses because people on the streets are driving electric vehicles. I'm sorry, if it comes to my house or my vehicle, I want to be more comfortable in my house. And if that means running my AC, that means less people using electric vehicles, not more. And Texas has its own grid. California is not on its own grid, but Texas is on its own grid. That still had rolling blackouts. That should really tell you something. And here in Maine, we get cold weather. We get inclement weather. Like, it can be all over the place. And you expect batteries to keep up with that? And some places, some people in Maine have to drive hours. Like over an hour 45, not uncommon in Maine. So how are you going to tell someone that on their way to work, they have to stop and charge their vehicle because it's cold outside and it only got half of what it was supposed to? Number 3, clean transportation. Oh, I'm sorry, I just read that. Number 4, climate adoption. Maine Won't Wait also focuses on protecting communities from climate-related impacts such as sea level rise, extreme weather, and economic losses. The plan highlights that inaction could cost the state $17.5 billion by 2050 in coastal damage alone. And that comes directly from Maine Climate Council. Like, how can we fact check that? And by 2050, we're not going to look back and be like, you were wrong! So what? Because that number could just be pulled out of anywhere. Like 17.5, that's an alarming number. But by 2050, will billions even be anything? We're in trillions of dollars of debt. And I know as an American taxpayer, if we were behind $70 that we owed the US, they got 80,000 plus IRS agents coming for you. Yet, the leaders who should be setting the example allow trillions of dollars of deficit. Trillions and trillions and trillions. So that number, $17.5 billion by 2050 in coastal damage, that makes me think of Al Gore's Inconvenient Truths, which I believe came out in 2007. I was a junior. It was all the hype, and it was forced down our throats. Like, it was in chemistry, we watched that video as if it was gospel or something. It didn't age well. Yet that was pushed down our throats. So, going down the rabbit hole, I do want to further look into an inconvenient truth, because here we have 2007 to 2024, we have a lot of data. We have a lot that we can look into. So me looking into green energy here in the state of Maine and offshore wind turbines more specifically has led me down a rabbit hole. Number 5, economic opportunities. By investing in clean energy and climate adaptation, Maine hopes to create 30,000 new jobs by 2030. This plan promotes workforce development in green energy sector and aims to keep energy expenditures within the state. Who's promising that? I mean, if somebody from out of state offers a lower bid than what in-state can do, are the politicians in Maine really going to decline that because of some campaign promise that they had set out? And I'm sorry, in December 2020, we had far larger issues than climate change. So why were we pushing this at all at that point? Why are we continuing to go down this path now? We understand that there are wars and wars across the globe. Devastation in our country, illegal immigrants flooding our state borders. And I have no problem with legal immigration. What I have a problem with are individuals getting mass imported to the state and then not being, without any assimilation, without knowing the English language, without knowing the culture they're coming into, and then not expected to. That doesn't fare well with me at any point. If I were to go to South Korea and impose my American standards and then have a bunch of my relatives and friends and coworkers come and flood an area in South Korea, I would think that was just as egregious. Like, there's assimilation, there's adapting, there's learning the language and the culture and becoming one with the place that you're around. But to just come in, brunt force, and expect others to just bow to you because I'm here now, doesn't really fly well with me. So who's to say that we are going to keep the jobs in Maine? I mean, 30,000 jobs here in the state of Maine, how long is that going to last? Is it only going to be upfront jobs and then after it's maintenance, and so it's 1/3 of that? I have questions, and I'm not sure that they have answers to this. Not concrete. Number 6, equity and inclusion. We've talked about this on the channel, y'all. Let me dig into what they're saying. The plan emphasizes ensuring that all Mainers, including disadvantaged communities, benefit from climate action. This includes equitable access to clean energy technologies and job opportunities. Overall, Maine Won't Wait positions the state as a leader in climate action, balancing environmental stewardship with economic growth. Again, that's from Maine Climate Council and Maine Public. That led me into my next question. Like, what is Maine's total greenhouse gas emissions, and what has it been for the last 20 years? What is Maine's total greenhouse gas emissions? I wanted to ask that next because, I mean, we're working so hard to reduce it. It's got to be substantial, right? Current greenhouse gas emissions, as of recent reports, come primarily from transportation, which accounts for over half of the state's emissions. The rest is attributed to electricity generation, residential heating, and industrial activities. While Maine is performing well compared to national averages due to its heavy reliance on renewable energies like hydropower and wind, transportation and heating remain key sectors that require further attention to meet emission reduction targets. Like, who set these targets? Why? Okay. Until further notice, like, this is coming from Maine Public and Maine Climate Council. I'll let you know if I'm pulling from a place where it's not. So until I let you know otherwise. those are the sources. So Maine's greenhouse gas emissions over the last 20 years. Historical trends from 2000 to 2020. Maine's GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, peaked in the early 2000s but have steadily declined since. In 2005, emissions were about 30 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And then it gives the chemical structure MMTCO sub 2E. This was largely driven by energy consumption from transportation, electricity generation, and heating. Between 1990 and 2020, Maine achieved a 25% reduction in emissions, surpassing its 2020 goal of a 10% reduction. By 2017, emissions had dropped to around 17.5 mmTCO2e, making a significant decline compared to 2005 levels. Current levels, as of 2020 to 2023, as the most recent data, Maine's GHG emissions have stabilized at around 17 to 18. Let me go over that again. Million metric tons of CO2 equivalent, marking a significant decline compared to 2005 levels. Current levels. Okay, I repeated myself. I got off of my first job, y'all. This is a hobby for me, but something that I'm passionate about. So, yeah, I stutter, and I'm still getting back into all of this. Give me a little bit of time, and I'll be better. Future targets, 2030 and beyond. By 2030, Maine aims to reduce its GHG emissions by 45% from 1990 levels, which would bring emissions down to around 12.3 million metric tons of CO2 per equivalent. By 2050, the target is an 80% reduction, translating to about 5.1 mmTCO2. The state is also targeting carbon neutrality by 2045, which would mean balancing remaining emissions with carbon removal efforts, potentially reaching near zero emissions. Potentially? By 2045? Carbon neutrality? Does this feel too soon for anyone else? Like, even if this is the road we need to go down, should we be going down it this quickly? I don't even run down a mountain that quickly. A trail that I hiked up, I'm not going to run down that trail, even though I know what's coming. There reaches a certain velocity. You got to slow yourself, slow your pace. Am I wrong? Maine's progress reflects its commitment to climate action driven by renewable energy investments, clean transportation initiatives, and improving energy efficiency in homes and businesses. So, I looked into the Maine Won't Wait, and Governor Janet Mills wrote a stirring letter that started the whole thing off, and she compares what's happening now to something that was happening in 1970 with the banks of the Little Androscoggin River, and how it was toxic from chemical pollution and toxic waste. Okay, well, we know those are issues, and we know that you shouldn't let those into waters that local wildlife, that hunters, that indigenous people, that rural people depend upon, obviously. But I don't see how having electric vehicles is equatable to stopping chemical output directly into riverways. And she used this stirring letter from this little girl at the time, Susan, and how she was writing to the Senator Masuki, Senator Muskie, and then he branched out and he fought for clean air and clean water. That is awesome. I applaud that. Going electric as quickly as we are, based on the technology available, based on the climate that we live in here in Maine, it's not the same. It's apples and oranges. Sure, they're fruits. They're different. They are different. And we need to treat them differently. So, I mean, her opening letter, Janet Mills, back in 2020, not that stirring. It tried to be. I wasn't gripped. So I also found that in September 1st, like right as I was starting to get back into filming, I saw that Maine faces lawsuit for failing to adopt EV mandates, the latest state-level climate court case. This comes from Maine Monitor, and it was written by Annie Roplek on September 1st, 2024. Experts say a narrow focus on specific state laws and emissions sectors shows promise as a tactic in climate litigation, with wins for plaintiffs in comparable states in cases in Hawaii, Montana, and Massachusetts. And if you know how the law works, then if you have basis, if you have principle, as in Hawaii, Montana, and Massachusetts, you're more likely to win that case in your favor because there is already precedent. So a pending youth climate lawsuit in Maine represents the latest iteration of legal strategies aimed at holding states accountable for emissions cutting targets. The case, filed earlier this year by nonprofits Conservative Law Foundation, CLF, Sierra Club, and Maine Youth Action, argues that the Maine Department and Board of Environmental Protections have fallen short on their legal duty to pass rules that will help achieve Maine's required emissions reductions. I will remind you, and of course the links will be below, this came from September 1st. Who has the time to go out and protest something like this? Again, it is not on the top 10 pressing issues that I am facing on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. I work full-time. I do YouTube as a hobby for right now. Hopefully I'll get monetized soon. And I get passionate about these things, but I cannot imagine going out of my way for something like this when we have so many other pressing issues. Why is no one talking about the electricity bill, or gasoline, or immigrants coming in illegally, or how our money is going to Qatar and Norway and Canada? Nope, but we have time to talk all about this process that we've already begun. We've already made steps, and they're saying we're not making it fast enough, we're not progressing quickly enough, even though we're still another 5.5 years out. So the case that was brought forward is from I pulled up another article to talk about it. Maine Morningstar. Maine youth environmentalists sue the state for lack of action to cut carbon emissions. This comes from earlier in the year, April 22nd, 2024, and this was written by Anne Marie Hill. So again, I mean, even in April of this year, we had larger problems. And then you're going to go and sue the state. You're going to take up taxpayer dollars to fight this case. I bet you're not a taxpayer. Like, people that are advocating for this, working for these NGOs, these youth, are they students? Are they just living off the system at home? Are they having parents take care of them? Because at 18 years old, I was working part-time and in college, and I didn't have time for this. I didn't get the best grades, but I got above average. And I worked hard for that. And I worked hard on the side to pay for that. Yet, the youth have time to come out and do this, and then they have groups backing them, we have bigger fish to fry. Like, we have bigger lobsters to catch. Throw that one back in, let it grow a little bit more. We have time. We don't have time for some of these other things. Just how it is. So, I mean, these students that think they're doing these things, these Maine youth and environmentalists are suing the Maine Department of Environmental Protections for what they allege is a failure to take action on cutting carbon emissions. I bet they feel they're eating this up, like they are big dogs on campus. They're really making change. I really think that they believe that, and that's a call to action for adults and for the generation that's supposed to be leading. And there's several generations above the youth that are doing this. And as an older generation, even myself, it is my responsibility to instruct and to just follow a path that leads these youth to a better direction. You don't always need to preach it. Sometimes you just need to live it. And right now, the older generations from the youth of today do need to be doing a better job. Across the board. Across the board, we need to do better. We need to lead in a more diplomatic, empathetic, yet structured way. And we're letting the youth run away with us now. It's scary. Yeah, so I don't want to dig even more into that. I'm going to leave that article up because I don't want to give time to that. But what they're suing over, also another article from Maine Morningstar, is Maine Board of Environmental Protection rejects Advanced Clean Car Act, Clean Car 2 Act. Amid debate on proposed EV rule, Biden administration rolled out new federal emission standards. Again, this article is Anne Marie Hilton. This was written on March 20th, 2024. I didn't mean to go backwards like this, but that's how it happened. The Board of Environmental Protection received nearly 3,000 public comments on a proposed rule to bring more zero-emission vehicles to Maine that was ultimately voted down Wednesday. Yes. Vote that shit down. Vote that shit down. 3,000 public comments asking for more zero-emission vehicles? I'm sorry. Out of a state of 1.1 rising million, you got 3,000 people to just write in and say, "We want more. Can we have some more, sir?" No. No, you fucking can't. Leave. Like, nope, sorry, not convincing enough. I'm so glad that it was voted down. 4 members voted against implementing the rule and 2 voted in support. You 2 gets to go. You do not have the Maine people in mind when you support something like that. You simply don't. When Mainers are struggling to literally rub 2 pennies together, you want us to work towards a more environmental and climate-friendly approach when the state of Maine has literally 17 million metrics of carbon CO2 per equivalent, when the entire US has around 6,500 plus. Like our 17. Even reducing 17 to 0, what is that going to do? And I understand that you're saying that it all adds up if Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont and Rhode Island, if we all do this, and Massachusetts and California, like, we'll slowly get there. I do get that, but it only works if developmental countries like China and India are on board. India is right behind us in carbon emissions. China's ahead of us. Sure, they say they're doing things, but how are you going to crack down on Mainers trying to rub 2 pennies together and try to put that on our backs? We are not ready. Simply put, we are not ready. If I saw a Mainer picking up a penny off the gas station parking lot, I wouldn't even bat an eye. Not today. A penny saved is a penny earned. And damn, is that not more true today than it was 200 years ago when Benjamin Franklin first coined that term. In the 90s, you would have imagined picking up a penny and been like, no, I'm not going to touch that. Nowadays, I would not bat an eye at someone bending down to pick up a penny. I'd probably call them entrepreneurial or looking for the best in the worst circumstances. Because that's what kind of environment we are in 2024. When I was born in 1990, we did not have this kind of disparity, this kind of desperation, this kind of lack of hope. Yet here I am in my 30s, and that's what I'm facing. And that's what we're facing. Let me know your comments below. I'm trying to do more research, but I'm trying to take you guys along on the road. I don't want to just present a bunch of facts at you that you may or may not fully comprehend. I would really like to make this more of a research project where throughout all of these videos, we come to understand together the complexities of the situation that we're facing, whether it's offshore wind turbines, who's going to win the gubernatorial race in 2026 for Maine, or the elections here, presidential elections in November 2024. Like, we have a lot to focus on, and I want to take you step by step through that process. And so far, this is the easiest way that I've found. Let me know in the comments what you think. Respond to things that struck you either in a good way or a bad way. I want to know. Like, good engagement, bad engagement, as long as it's respectful, all of it's good for the engagement and the algorithm, and it helps me reach more people. So in that, I thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video, y'all. Until then, this has been Drew Hoagland on MaineStreamCurrent.